Biomed Nexus. Daily updates, your essential biotech, medtech, and pharma recap. No noise, just what matters. TLDR AstraZeneca is paying $600 million upfront for global rights to Leqembi, an EGFR lung cancer drug from China's Dizal Pharmaceutical. It is the biggest upfront of AstraZeneca's China spree and its fifth such deal since 2025, landing 3 days before the congressional deadline. The former Akero team, backed by Fairmount, is launching a new public biotech built around an immunology drug licensed from a Chinese firm. US capital, Chinese asset, same playbook. The FDA approved an injectable version of Leqembi, the Eisai and Biogen Alzheimer's drug, in what Stat called another post-Macquarie reversal. Agenus scrapped its Phase 3 metastatic colorectal cancer trial to concentrate resources on MSS colon cancer. Pfizer shook up its obesity discovery leadership, naming Dana Breen to head the group after the departure of longtime scientific lead Kendra Bentz. Executive takeaway yesterday, we said to watch what companies do rather than what they say about China, and pointed to AstraZeneca as the tell. Today, AstraZeneca made the point louder than we could have. It is paying $600 million upfront for global rights to Leqembi, an EGFR inhibitor for lung cancer from Dizal Pharmaceutical of China. That is the biggest upfront of AstraZeneca's entire China run, and it is the fifth licensing deal it has struck with a Chinese drug maker since the start of 2025. It lands 3 days before Merck, AbbVie, Lilly, Pfizer, and BMS have to explain their China trials to the House Select Committee. If you needed a single data point to capture how the industry actually feels about the probe, this is it. AstraZeneca is not among the 5 named companies, which gives it cover, but the message is unmistakable, the science is worth it, and the political noise is not changing the calculus. Leqembi itself is a real asset, not a flyer. It is already approved in both the US and China for a form of advanced non-small cell lung cancer with specific mutations, and it is under review as a first-line therapy. AstraZeneca said it fits alongside its existing EGFR lung cancer franchise, which is one of the strongest in the industry. So this is not a cheap option on early science. It is a $600 million bet on a de-risked, approved drug that slots directly into a category AstraZeneca already dominates. That is what makes it such a clean illustration of the thesis we have tracked all year. The best Chinese assets are good enough that the largest, most sophisticated buyers want them even now, with a congressional spotlight glaring and a Treasury review bill pending. Friday will bring the formal answers. The real answer arrived today with a wire transfer. Read full analysis. China AstraZeneca's biggest China bet yet landed exactly when the politics were hottest. AstraZeneca agreed to pay $600 million upfront for global rights to Leqembi from Dizal Pharmaceutical, according to Stat. The drug is an EGFR inhibitor already approved in the US and China for advanced or metastatic non-small cell lung cancer with certain mutations, and it is under regulatory review as a first-line therapy. AstraZeneca said it fits with its existing EGFR-mutated lung cancer products, one of the deepest franchises in oncology. This is AstraZeneca's 5th China licensing deal since the start of 2025 and its largest upfront, coming just after last week's CSPC and Sino biopharmaceutical agreements. The timing, 3 days before the July 17th congressional deadline, is the loudest possible statement that the industry is not retreating from Chinese science. The same pattern showed up a layer down. The former executive team of Akero Therapeutics, recently sold to Novo Nordisk, has partnered with the prolific company creator Fairmount to launch a new public biotech built around a long-acting immunology drug licensed from a Chinese firm, according to Stat, Western Talent, Western Capital, Chinese Molecule. It is the same engine driving the AstraZeneca deal, just at startup scale, Regulatory injectable Leqembi got cleared, and the FDA keeps reversing itself in companies' favor. BIIB, ICI, the FDA approved a subcutaneous injectable version of Leqembi, the ICI and Biogen Alzheimer's antibody, according to STAT, which framed it as another post-Macquarie reversal. The injectable format matters for a drug that until now required regular intravenous infusions, a real burden for Alzheimer's patients and caregivers. An at-home or lower-burden injection could meaningfully improve uptake of a drug whose launch has been slower than Biogen hoped. It also fits the pattern we have tracked since the spring. Under acting leadership, the FDA has been more willing to approve, expand, and reverse than it was during the more restrictive Macquarie and Prasad era. The Unicuri Huntington's reversal, the Replimune acceptance, and now injectable Leqembi all point the same direction. Oncology Agenus cut its losses in metastatic colorectal cancer to bet on a harder target. Agenus discontinued its phase 3 trial in metastatic colorectal cancer to concentrate its resources on MSS colon cancer, according to reporting compiled by Lambda Biologics. MSS, or microsatellite stable, colon cancer is one of the most stubbornly immunotherapy-resistant settings in oncology, a tumor type where checkpoint inhibitors have largely failed. Concentrating a shrinking resource base on a historically resistant target is a high-risk, high-reward bet. It is also the kind of hard prioritization call that cash-constrained biotechs are making all over the sector right now, choosing one shot on goal rather than spreading thin across several. GLP-1 Pfizer reshuffled its obesity leadership after years of coming up short. PFF Pfizer named Dana Breen Vice President and Head of Obesity Discovery following the departure of longtime scientific leader Kendra Bentz, according to the Pharma Letter. The leadership change comes after a frustrating stretch for Pfizer in obesity, where its oral GLP-1 efforts, including danuglipron, repeatedly stumbled, while Lilly and Novo pulled far ahead. A new discovery head signals Pfizer is not giving up on the biggest commercial opportunity in the industry, but it is starting well behind, and rebuilding an obesity pipeline from a standing start in 2026 is a daunting proposition. For a company facing its own patent cliffs, missing obesity has been one of the more costly strategic gaps of the past few years. Coming up, Friday, July 17th, the 5 named farmers respond to the House China Trials Probe. July 22nd, comment window closes on the FDA's expedited IND pilot. July 31st, Section 232 pharma tariffs effective for large companies. August 2026, Replimune RP1 FDA response. Imminent, Revolution Medicines, CNPV filing, Lilly Found IoT2D filing, Read Full Analysis Biomed Nexus Pro, Institutional Intelligence Brief, why the Zegfrovi deal is the cleanest signal. Yet we have tracked a lot of China deals this year, and most of them share a structure, modest upfront, large milestones, early or mid-stage asset. That structure lets a buyer take a cheap option on Chinese science while capping downside. It is a hedge as much as a commitment. The Zegfrovi deal is different, and the difference is the whole point. AstraZeneca is paying $600 upfront for a drug that is already approved in 2 major markets and under review for a first-line expansion. This is not an option on early science. It is a large cash commitment to a de-risked, revenue-capable asset that slots into AstraZeneca's existing EGFR lung cancer franchise. When a buyer pays real money up front for an approved drug, it is expressing conviction, not hedging. Now, layer in the timing. This landed 3 days before the congressional deadline. In the same month, the House Select Committee put 5 of AstraZeneca's peers on notice, and the Biotech Investment National Security Act sat pending. A company worried about the political trajectory would have waited or structured the deal to minimize its China exposure, or at least avoided announcing it this week. AstraZeneca did none of that. It wrote the biggest upfront check of its China spree and put its name on it. The read for anyone weighing China risk, the most sophisticated large-cap dealmaker in Chinese assets, second only to Roche by deal count, just told you through its actions that it sees the political risk as manageable and the science as worth paying full price for. AstraZeneca has more cover than the named five, so this is not a perfect proxy for what Merck or Lilly will do. But it is the clearest available evidence that inside the industry, the conviction on Chinese science is holding even at the moment of maximum political heat. Watch whether any of the five signs anything in the 2 weeks after Friday. If they do, this stops being an AstraZeneca story and becomes an industry one. The FDA reversal pattern injectable Leqembi is the latest in a run of FDA decisions that have gone the industry's way under acting leadership, and the pattern is now clear enough to trade on. Recall the sequence. The FDA reversed its demand for additional trial data and accepted Unicor's Huntington's gene therapy filing. It accepted Replimune's RP1 resubmission after 2 prior rejections. Regenxbio is filing its Duchenne gene therapy expecting a friendlier reception. And now the FDA has approved a more convenient formulation of Leqembi that eases a real barrier to uptake. The through line is a posture shift. During the Makari and Prasad period, the agency took a more restrictive, skeptical stance, particularly on accelerated approvals and borderline applications. Under the current acting leadership, including acting Commissioner Kyle Diamantas and acting SEBA Director Karim Mikhail, the agency has been more willing to grant flexibility, accept resubmissions, and approve formulation and label expansions. This matters for pipeline planning. Companies that had programs stall or get rejected in the past 18 months should be reassessing whether now is the moment to resubmit. Biopharma Dive noted that a cluster of coming decisions will test just how flexible the agency is willing to be. Our read is that the near-term bias favors approval, which is good for sponsors with borderline assets and worth pricing into how you value companies with pending FDA decisions. The caveat is that acting leadership is temporary. A permanent commissioner with a different philosophy could shift the posture again, so the window may not stay open indefinitely. Can Pfizer rebuild obesity from behind? Pfizer changing its obesity discovery? Leadership is a small news item that points at a large strategic failure. Obesity is the biggest commercial opportunity in the industry, projected to exceed $150 billion, and Pfizer has almost entirely missed it. The history is painful. Pfizer's oral GLP-1 program centered on danuglipron repeatedly disappointed, with tolerability and dosing problems that forced it to abandon or retool candidates, while Lilly and Novo built dominant franchises. Every quarter, Pfizer spent struggling with its oral program. The incumbents extended their lead in manufacturing, prescriber relationships, and clinical data. A new discovery head signals Pfizer is not conceding the category, but the math is unforgiving. Lilly has Foundayo approved and retatrutide coming with best-in-class efficacy. Novo has oral and injectable Wegovy and a deep pipeline. The next generation of assets, amylin combinations, muscle-preserving agents, and oral small molecules, is already being locked up by the leaders and by well-funded challengers. Pfizer is not just behind on a product, it is behind on a platform, a data set, and a commercial infrastructure that took competitors years to build. The realistic path for Pfizer is not to out-innovate Lilly and Novo from scratch. It is to buy its way in, the way it has tried to buy its way into other areas it missed. A leadership change in discovery is a signal of intent, but the faster route to relevance in obesity runs through business development, not the lab. Watch whether Pfizer's next move in the category is a molecule from its own labs or a checkbook aimed at someone else's. AstraZeneca paid $600 for an approved China drug 3 days before the deadline and settled any question about how the industry feels. The FDA keeps reversing in companies' favor, and Pfizer is trying to rebuild obesity from a standing start. Friday is the deadline. What are you watching? Reply to this email. Visit the Pro Hub Read. Full article sponsorship slots for 2026 are limited. See packages and pricing. New Biomed Nexus signals weekly sales intelligence for life sciences BD teams. Learn more